Hi guys, welcome back to Fort Reads. Tonight we are on 6 p.m. in the 24 Hours in Nowhere book. I sat up in bed. There was really only one thing I could do to get the bike from Bo. I'd have to buy it back. I hunted around my room for anything that might be of value. All I came up with were some old garage sale action figures that could be considered collector's items by some people. But they weren't in the box, and they were dirty. And some were broken. Okay, so they were complete garbage. I had a few books, my thesaurus, but I doubted I could pay anyone to take that, a sports book called The Great Ones, a book called Our Cool Brain, about how cool the brain is, obviously, and an SAT prep book that was about 10 years out of date. But most of my books were borrowed from the high school's library. It probably wouldn't be a good idea to sell them, and who in nowhere would want to buy a book anyway? I had my clothes, but most third graders didn't have any money, and really, even if my clothes could fit someone older than that, I doubted I'd be able to squeeze more than a quarter out of each piece. The truth was, I owned nothing of value. A 13-year-old kid living in his grandma's trailer in the poorest town in Arizona isn't exactly rolling in it, unless it is 30-year-old orange shag trailer carpet crawling with enough dust mites to make it over the entire country. I reached into my pants pocket. Well, maybe it wasn't completely true that I owned nothing of valuable. I pulled out my pocket watch and ran a finger over the engraved initials. WDA. It had belonged to my great-grandfather, Fergus Foley. No one knew what the initials stood for. My grandma had given the watch to my father, and my father had given the watch to me. It was one of the only things he'd ever given me, and now it was the only thing I owned worth anything at all. I shoved it back in my pocket. Last resort. I'd just have to go to Bo and see if there was anything I could possibly do for him. Maybe I could do his homework for him for the rest of the year. Then again, I didn't think Bo really cared about his grades. I could tutor him for the SAT. I picked up the preparation book I borrowed regularly from the high school's library. The test may have been nearly 4 years away, but I was already studying for it. Of course, Bo probably cared about that as little as he cared about his grades. Kids like Bo didn't go to college. They dropped out of high school. Nowhere high school graduation rate was proof of that, the worst in the whole country. I continued thinking about ways to get Loretta back. Maybe I could be like one of those minions for Bo. Lots of villains had minions. I wasn't completely sure what being a minion entailed, but I was positive I could handle it. I thumbed through my thesaurus as I lay back on my lumpy pillow. Minion. Follower, crony, underling, slave. Yeah, okay, I hated that idea. That idea was the worst. I slammed the thesaurus shut and got up from my bed. I peeked out my door to see what my grandma was doing. As though she could feel me spying on her, she called from the kitchen, "You want some beans?" "No, thank you." "You sure?" "I put my special seasoning in there," she said in her best "I'm trying to entice you" tone. Grandma's special seasoning was a spice she always had on hand that she got from the dollar store in Casa Grande called Spepper. I looked at the ingredients list one day on the bottle, and it literally just said salt and pepper mixed together in one container. But Grandma thought it really made everything taste better. And honestly, she was right. That sounds good, but I think I might be getting sick. Must be that rash. I think I have heat stroke. I'm really going to bed now. Definitely going to bed and won't be coming back out. She stirred the pot of canned beans, her eyes still fixed to the TV in the living room. "Good night," she said without looking at me. Not even the threat of me dying from heat stroke could tear her away from the sight of one woman dragging another woman across the stage by her hair with an audience cheering her on. I shut my door and locked it. I opened my pocket watch and checked the time. 6:15. I wound it up and put it back on my table. Pulling open my bedside table. I wound it up and put it back in my pocket. Pulling open my bedside table, I took out the only $7 I had and stuffed the money into my pants. Then I opened my bedroom window and climbed through it, dropping down onto a parched desert dirt. The day was still blistering hot as I made my way to Bo's trailer. but I hadn't wanted to risk getting a jar of water from the kitchen and making my grandma suspicious. August was a brutal time of year in nowhere, when the thermostat dropped to 90 only in the middle of the night. The daytime temperatures were unbelievable, much like the high school graduation rate. I gazed up at the hollow mountain hovering over me as I passed through town. The town of Nowhere sat at the base of the mountain and consisted of a gas station with one pump, the Nowhere Market and Ostrich Farm, a scrap yard, Rusty's motorcycle shop owned by a guy named Bud, a bar called Cal's, and a second bar called Better Than Cal's. Better Than Cal's was started by Robert Norton, who obviously hated Cal Bunker. The feud between the two bar owners was legendary in Nowhere, a town with no movie theater, no mall, no anything else worth doing, but yes, 2 bars. I kept expecting Cal to change the name of Cal's to Better Than Cal's Serves Rat Poison, or Better Than Cal's Can Kiss My Butt, but he hadn't yet. Cal had the world's largest collection of rattlesnake skins. The walls were practically peppered with them. Better Than Cal's had the world's largest collection of rattlesnake rattles, all hanging from the ancient wooden boarded ceiling. So in addition to the long-standing feud, it seemed like the two were also embroiled in some kind of snake-off. Of course, we also had 2 schools, Nowhere Elementary and Nowhere High School. At Nowhere Elementary, the middle schoolers were lumped in with the elementary students, as there weren't enough of us to have our own middle school. This might have been nice for those kids who felt like they ruled the school in 7th and 8th grade, but I didn't rule over anything or anyone. Even the 3rd graders bossed me around, probably because most of them were capable of beating me up. As I passed by the deserted school, tripping every now and then over crumbling asphalt from Nowhere's only paved road, I felt sick about school starting again on Monday. Endless hours sitting in a classroom, listening to boring lessons, decades-old textbooks, brown cafeteria food, hardly anyone to sit with at lunch, and kids who bullied like they were training for the bullying Olympics. Foreboding, apprehension, anxiety, fear. My whole life was just one big sense of foreboding. I neared Beau's trailer, the foreboding churning in my stomach like my grandma's mushy egg salad, made better with pepper, of course, and my previously brisk steps slowed to a trudge. Who knew what new forms of torture Beau might devise for me? I walked up the warped, split wooden steps and knocked on the peeling front door of the dilapidated trailer. I mean, no one in Nowhere had a particularly lovely place to live, but this squalor, filthiness, a state of being extremely dirty and unpleasant. A man's voice shrieked, "Beau, get the door!" "Geez, Jack," I heard Beau shout, "I'm coming!" The metal door screeched open, and then I was staring into Beau's face for the 2nd time that day. I must have done gone and lost my mind, as my grandma would say. "What do you want, Cactus Face?" Beau's scowl contorted into a twisted smile, and he laughed. "I sure did a number on you, didn't I?" My mouth was as dry as the splintery wood cracking underneath my feet. When I spoke, it came out as a pitiful, hoarse whisper. "Beau?" He leaned down. "Yes?" he whispered, mocking me. I cleared my throat and swallowed. "Can I please buy Rossi's bike back from you?" "With what?" "I have a little money." "How much?" $7, but Beau burst out laughing. "You're a funny guy, Gus. Hilarious." "I can work off the rest. I can do anything." "Unless you can magically come up with a lot more money, forget about it." I reached into my pocket and felt the watch. Rossi had traded her most valuable possession for me. I held it out to Beau. "How about this? It's worth a lot of money. It's really old. It's an antique." And I know, before I could finish, Beau smacked my hand from underneath me and the watch went flying onto the porch. I gaped, completely helpless, and it slipped between the wooden slats and the dried up boards and disappeared. "You're crazy if you'd think I'd trade a whole motorcycle for a piece of garbage like that, no matter what kind of fancy words you use to describe it." I turned back to him. "Then what? What do I have to do? I'll do anything." Beau pursed his chapped lips, squinted his eyes, and scratched his chin. Oh my gosh, what was that? Stubble? How about you eat that cactus? I tore my eyes away from Beau's intimidating chin. If that's what it takes. No, too easy. Bring me a rattlesnake's rattle that you bit off with your own teeth while it's still alive. I want to see it squirming in your mouth. No, wait. Bring me 14 live bark scorpions and let me watch as they crawl all over your body. No, wait. Bring me the hide of a coyote you killed and skinned with your bare hands. Then wear its head on your head like a hat. No, wait! I took a deep breath and resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Actually, I was kind of impressed. With his limited brain power, he had quite an imagination. What? I'll do whatever it takes. He grinned and narrowed his eyes. Bring me a piece of gold from dead Frenchman's mine to buy it. I laughed. Yeah, right. Beau continued grinning at me. Yeah, right. My laughter faded. I took a step back. That mine is a death trap. Well, you said you'd do whatever it takes. Yeah, I did say that, but I didn't think even Beau Taylor would want me to actually die. Dead Frenchman Mine was Nowhere's biggest claim to fame. A few years ago, two guys who had recently left Better Than Cows went in it and never came back out. A section of it caved in, killing both of them. Then, last year, another patron of Better Than Cows went in there, hoping to find the dead Frenchman's treasure. He never came back out either. A rotten beam had fallen on his head. Hey, I just thought of a new name for cows. People who drink it better than cows end up dead. The deaths were all over the news, and for about 5 minutes everyone in the country was aware of this poor little nothing town in the middle of the desert called Nowhere, the poorest town in Arizona with hidden treasure in a deadly mine. That was when that reporter came here to interview people about all the drunk guys who had died in there. His newspaper then went on to rank Nowhere as the least livable town in the entire United States, whatever that meant. I guess we were all on the verge of death out here in Nowhere. It really wasn't that bad a place to live, though. When you think about it, Nowhere was the best at a lot of things. Number 1 in poverty, number 1 in high school dropouts, number 1 in least livability, number 1 in drunken mine deaths. We tried not to let it all go to our heads. Dead Frenchman Mine originally got its name around 70 years ago when a French guy by the name of William Beaufort hid in there after stealing a pile of gold from his partner, a Mexican rancher by the name of Jose Navarro. I knew all about it because it was also the night that my grandmother's father got bitten by a rattlesnake and died in the desert. And that pocket watch that had just disappeared under the floorboards was the only thing he had on him when he died. Anyway, the story goes that Jose shot William for stealing the gold, and William shot him back. As Jose lay on his deathbed, he told the sheriff what had happened. The sheriff traced William Dufert back to the mine where he had hidden. William Dufert set off explosives, causing the section of the mine to cave in, killing both himself and the sheriff. A lot of people had tried to find William Dufert's body since then, hoping that it would have gold on it, but no one had ever succeeded. So basically, everyone who had entered the mine in the last 70 years had died an agonizing, suffocating, bone-crushing death. In a nutshell. Besides, I said, there's no gold left in that mine. If there were, it would be swarming with treasure hunters. People were always willing to risk their lives for money. I guess you'll have to go check and find out. That is, if you want Rossi's bike bad enough. He eyed me up and down. And I think you do. It's so obvious you have the hots for her. I do not, I declared. I resisted the urge to look left. I read in the brain book that it's a good way to tell if a person is lying if they tend to look to the left. Then again, how would Beau Taylor possibly know that? I wasn't sure he was even literate, so I allowed my eyes to slowly wander in that direction. Not that I had the hots for Rossi, please. She consistently had helmet hair, plus she was always sweaty and dusty from racing. I mean, that's just gross. You do too. Bo leaned into me and spoke so low and slow that his filmy... Nope. Bo leaned into me and spoke low and slow through his filmy, yellow, brown-flecked teeth. His breath now smelled like Spam, which was possibly a step up from the chewing tobacco and pork and beans, but still, I could never eat Spam again. And that cut out about 25% of my meals. You love that hoppy Indian. My heart beat violently, increasing in intensity as it moved from my chest to my head. That rushing sound filled my ears. I told you, she's Tanaho Odhem. And I told you, Bo smirked as he glanced down at my clenched fist, I don't care. He knew exactly what he was doing, trying to antagonize me into doing something foolish so he would have an excuse to pound my head until I was about 6 inches shorter. I resisted the urge to attack. If I took a swing at Bo now, I would never get Loretta back, because I'd already be dead, or much shorter. I wasn't sure which was worse. How much gold? I asked through gritted teeth. Bo shrugged. A big enough piece to pay for the bike. I squinted at him. That dirt bike is barely worth anything. I know, he laughed, like he was in on some big joke. It's such a worthless trash heap. I didn't point out that Rossi had beaten him several times on that worthless trash heap. Fine, I'll do it. I'll go to the mine, but I want your word that if I succeed, you'll let me have the bike back. Shut the door before I beat your head in, I heard Jack call. I jumped at the threat, but Bo just glared at me. Ever since Bo's mom had died and his dad had gone to prison, he had been living with his brother Jack in the trailer. Jack's toughness was renowned in Nowhere. He once raced and won with a broken wrist. He'd also spent a year at the center, which definitely added to his brutal image. He didn't get sent there for anything he did here. You could do just about anything in Nowhere and get away with it. Jack had made the mistake of pulling his crimes in Casa Grande. There were a lot of rumors about what he did to get put in the Center for Youth, the massive juvenile detention center between here and Casa Grande. Some kids claimed he beat up the wrong person. Bo frequently had black eyes and bruises, so I knew Jack was capable of it. Bo stuck out his bony hand, scarred from punching things, I think, which was at least twice the size of mine. Deal. I shook it, doing my best not to grimace as he nearly crushed my fingers to death. Then he slammed the door in my face. I massaged my throbbing hand as I squatted down in the dirt in front of his trailer and peered under the porch. It was stuffed. Like a stinking garage burrito. I crawled through the smelly, leaking trash bags and old newspapers and torn pillows. It was like a filthy sauna under there, heated by steaming sour beer bottles. I finally reached the space where the watch had fallen through. I heard a rattling and froze. I knew that sound. Everyone who lived in the desert knew that sound, but I had no idea where it had come from. The snake could have been hiding in a rotten, stuffed animal for all I knew. I stayed still, sweat pouring down my face, and debated what to do. Continue sorting through this festering garbage heap, or possibly die, or call it a day and leave. Nincompoop, a foolish person. I raised a shaking hand and gently pushed aside a garbage bag. The rattling continued. I moved forward slowly and shoved away a couple of old dirt tires. And there was the watch, perched on top a moldy towel. I moved slowly forward and grabbed it, then started backing up the way I'd come in. The air felt almost cool as I pushed myself out from under the porch, grateful I wasn't pumped full of venom. I examined my pocket watch. The glass hadn't shattered as I expected it would have, but the backing had come loose. I moved it a little from side to side with my thumb, but it didn't come completely off. Maybe I could fix it. I stuffed the watch back in my pocket and left that horrible place. And that's the end of chapter 2. Have a good night, guys.